So today, let's talk about Kokedama. You've probably seen these, right? These stunning little pieces of Japanese botanical art. But here's the thing. It is so much more than just a plant in a cool-looking moss ball. It's actually this incredible blend of philosophy, history, and, you won't believe it, some really clever science.
All right, let's just jump right in with a question that kind of flips everything on its head. What if a plant didn't need a pot? I mean, really think about that. That's the core idea of Kokedama. It totally challenges our basic assumptions about how we're supposed to keep plants, and, it opens up this whole new world for how we can display them and even interact with them. And the name? It's actually super straightforward. In Japanese, koke just means moss, and dama means ball. So yeah, Kokedama. It's literally a moss ball. But don't let that simplicity fool you. As we're about to find out, this one little object is packed with a ton of meaning.
Now, to really get what Kokedama is all about, we can't just start with the gardening stuff. Nope. We have to start with philosophy. You see, this isn't just about keeping a plant alive. It's about a whole way of looking at the world.
And that worldview has a name, Wabi-sabi. It's this beautiful Japanese concept that's all about finding beauty in things that are, well, imperfect, things that don't last forever, that are a little incomplete. It's about really appreciating that natural cycle of growth and, yeah, even decay.
That's really the heart of it. Wabi-sabi isn't about chasing some impossible idea of perfection. It's all about celebrating what's real, what's authentic, those little flaws, the signs of aging. That's where the real beauty is supposed to be.
And, this is a huge contrast to a lot of Western ideas of beauty, right? We often value perfect symmetry, things that look like they'll last forever, totally flawless. Wabi-sabi, it finds beauty in the exact opposite, the slightly lopsided, the fleeting, the authentic.
So, okay, how does this all connect back to the moss ball? Well, a kokedama is basically wabi-sabi in living form. It's like a messy, living sculpture. So when the moss turns a little brown or you see a root poking through, that's not a mistake. That's not a sign you're a bad plant parent. It's the plant's life story, right there on its own living vessel.
Okay, so now let's switch gears from philosophy to how this whole thing actually works, because there is some seriously incredible science going on here. A kokedama isn't just getting by without a pot. In a lot of ways, it's actually thriving because it doesn't have one. The big secret here is something called air pruning. So think about a normal pot. What happens? The roots grow out, hit that plastic wall, and then just start circling around and around, eventually choking the plant. But with a kokedama, when a root tip reaches the edge of the moss ball and hits the open air, the tip just dehydrates and stops growing outward. And this is the magic part. That signals the plant to go, okay, time to grow a bunch of new, tiny, fibrous roots inside the ball instead. And the results? They're amazing. The plant ends up with this super efficient, really dense root system that you could just never get in a regular pot. It stops the plant from getting root bound, it naturally keeps it compact and manageable, and it makes the plant way more resilient if you ever do decide to put it in a pot later on. It's a total win-win. Of course, the key to making all this work is the soil mix itself. It's a very specific recipe. Traditionally, they'd use something called kitotsuchi, which is like a sticky peat muck that holds it all together, and akadama, a volcanic clay, to make sure it gets enough air. But the good news is, today we can get that exact same effect with modern stuff like bentonite clay and perlite.
So where did this genius idea even come from? Well, it wasn't dreamed up in some fancy design studio. The origins are actually way more humble, and they're tied to the real-life struggles of people during a very specific time in Japanese history. We have to travel back in time to the Edo period in Japan. We're talking from the 1600s all the way to the mid-1800s. As cities like Edo, which we now call Tokyo, started to boom, space got really tight. People, especially folks like Buddhist monks and the working classes, were looking for a way to bring a little bit of nature inside, but they didn't have the room or the money for big, expensive pots and gardens.
And that's where Kokedama came in. It was the perfect solution. It even got the nickname the poor man's bonsai. It was this really democratic art form, born out of pure necessity. It meant that anyone could have their own living sculpture without the crazy high costs of traditional bonsai. I mean, the difference is just night and day. Traditional bonsai, that was for the elite. It needed expensive pots, special tools, and years of super careful training. Kokedama, on the other hand, was cheap, easy to get into, and you got a beautiful result right away. It was truly nature for the people. So for hundreds of years, Kokedama was this pretty niche thing, mostly known within Japan. But then the 21st century hit, and suddenly it just exploded onto the global design scene, totally reimagined for the modern world. And there's one person we can pretty much thank for that, a Dutch artist named Fedor van der Valk. He had this brilliant idea. He took the traditional kokedama, hung it from the ceiling with string, and called them string gardens. And people went wild for it. These floating, living sculptures just captured everyone's imagination. And that idea just opened the floodgates. Today, you see kokedama everywhere. They're perfect for vertical gardening in tiny apartments. They're a huge part of biophilic design. That's the idea of bringing nature into offices and cafes to help reduce stress. And the art form itself keeps evolving. People are now making them with huge plants, even small trees. But with all this new popularity comes a new responsibility. The traditional ingredient, peat moss, has become a real ecological problem. You see, peat bogs are super important ecosystems. They store a ton of carbon. Harvesting that peat just isn't sustainable, and it does a lot of damage. The great news is there's a fantastic, sustainable alternative, coconut coir. It's basically a waste product from the coconut industry, so it's totally renewable. Plus, it has a more neutral pH, which more plants actually prefer, and this is a big one. It's way easier to re-wet if it dries out. It's a simple switch that makes the whole thing sustainable. Even taking care of a kokedama is different. You don't just pour water on it. Instead, you soak the whole ball in a bowl of water for anywhere from, say, 10 minutes to an hour. You just wait until it feels heavy and totally saturated. It's a much more hands-on, kind of mindful process. So at the end of the day, what have we got? A kokedama isn't just a plant. It's this beautiful meeting point of art, science, and philosophy. You've got the Wabi-sabi idea of imperfect beauty, the clever science of air pruning, all wrapped up in one simple, elegant ball of moss. And that leaves us with a really interesting thought, doesn't it? As our cities get more crowded and our own living spaces get smaller, our need to connect with nature is getting bigger than ever. So, could this ancient art form, this potless way of living with plants, actually be one of the keys to the future of green living in our urban world?